Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about the composition of Taekwondo. Taekwondo is composed of 5 different things that are also intertwined with each other. These are the fundamental movements or basics, the sparring, the patterns, the self-defense, and the training itself. So let's talk about them. In the illustration, you can see that it's difficult to distinguish the beginning of the cycle from the end. There is, in fact, no beginning or end, like in the circle. The student will find that they will have to return time and time again to the beginning of fundamental movements practice to perfect the advanced sparring and self-defense techniques. The fundamental movements or basic movements are literally the most important things. As they say, they are the fundamentals, the basics. They are the building blocks of everything else, the patterns, the self-defense, the sparring, and all of those things are basically indispensable when you are perfecting the fundamental movements. Each fundamental movement basically represents an attacking or a defense against an imaginary opponent or opponents. You also have to figure out the particular target area and the definitive action against what is happening. It is necessary to learn all of the different fundamental movements so you can combine them, because if you know just a little bit, then you don't have as much techniques to combine together in case of an attack or attacks from different opponents. So when you know more moves, more different techniques, then you can move into an attack or a defense technique with more confidence. As you know, we talked about this on this channel. When you're doing the patterns, that is not just some moves to left, right, front, back, it's about placing yourself in a hypothetical situation when you have multiple opponents attacking from different angles. That's why you're moving forward and doing a block, or moving backwards and doing a kick, because you have to imagine that there are opponents coming towards you and you have to figure out what type of attack or defense technique you're going to use. Obviously, in the patterns, this is set. So if you're going to do this block, you can imagine that they just do a front midsection punch or maybe a kick, but then the block is still going to be good for that. And when you are constantly practicing these patterns, you figure out that after a while, the attacking and defense moves, they're gonna get to become a reflex, which is very interesting because you're gonna figure out what works with what and what doesn't work with another technique. So you will figure out different combinations that work seamlessly. Also, it's very interesting to know that once you practiced for a long time, obviously, and you didn't practice some of the earlier patterns, but you will still remember them because you have a thing called muscle memory. If you practice the patterns long enough, even if you practiced them couple years ago, you will still be able to do that pattern. Maybe not as well when you actually were practicing it or don't know whether the attack is a high section or low section, same with the kicks, but you will be able to remember it, and when you get back practicing that pattern, everything will come back. It's like riding a bicycle. When you're practicing all these different techniques, it's important to know that power and accuracy are utmost important, because you only need one single blow to stop the opponent, and then you can move on to the next opponent and the next one. You don't need to spend too much time with one opponent. That's why we are doing the different moves. Each pattern is completely different from the other one, and that's for you to figure out how they work. Is there a specific thing that you can associate with that pattern? And there are always changing circumstances. They are not looking the same, and you have to figure out what works best for you, how to learn it. I have a video about this. I'm going to link it here or here, how I do the patterns. I hope it helps you. So once all these basic movements and patterns have been practiced enough, you can do the sparring. There are different sparrings. So for example, there is the step sparring, what we usually start with. We have the 3-step sparring, we have the 2-step sparring, and then the 1-step sparring. It's very important that you practice with a partner. So one person does the attacking, the other person does the defending, and then one attack back. With the 3-step sparring, one person attacks, for example, 3 midsection punches, and then you have to figure out the distance of how far is the opponent coming, and then how are you going to block the techniques, and then what is your attack. For the 2-step sparring, it's very similar. It's just 2 attacks, and then you have to figure out how are you going to counter that. Here it's also important to figure out the stances, figure out the distance and the accuracy. For the 1-step sparring, the opponent can do 2 things. They can announce that they're gonna attack, or they don't. When they announce it, they get into the stance and then they say ki hap, and then they attack. Or they just don't and they just do the technique, and then you as your partner, you have to react to your partner's moves. It's very important to know what kind of techniques you can do. So you build up from 3-step sparring to 1, and then you can move on to sparring where the opponent is not going to announce the techniques. You're going to have to react, be alert, be conscious and conscientious at the same time with your partner, figure out how to attack, how to defend, how to block, how to counterattack, and just overall be very mindful of your actions, because you don't want to hurt the partner. You want to make sure that everything goes well and you're helping each other learn. When we talk about sparring, it's good to practice with different partners, because one can be very tall and thin, other can be shorter, and you still have to figure out how do you attack, how do you defend. It's also very good to spar against people who are on different belt level than you are. So for example, if you are a green belt, it's good for you to spar with other green belts, but also with higher level belts, so you can see, oh, that's something I would like to do. And you can also spar with the white belts and help them to move up. And we talk about the traditional sparring here, or prearranged sparring, which is when 2 people get together and they basically do a martial artist choreography or a dance. It really does look like a dance if 2 people can really do it nicely. Where do we see this? In the movies. Every martial art film, when you see the 2 people fight or one person fight against multiple opponents, it's a choreographed martial arts show, basically. Because you see the different moves, how they react, what's the attack, what's the block. And when 2 people do it, it's very much about teamwork. So you have to figure out what you know best, what your partner does best, and then you have to meet in the middle and figure out how you can do everything and how you can make it work. And that's where the magic happens. When we talk about the self-defense part, it's very important to know that Taekwondo has a specific self-defense style, but there are other self-defense methods that are teaching basically the same thing but in a different way. It's good for you to learn the basics of self-defense, which is completely different. It's not like a prearranged sparring or sparring. It's completely different. So that's a whole other video in itself. For the training itself, it's very important that you go to all the training sessions. I remember when I was just starting out Taekwondo and I went to all the classes, and it felt so good to go and just practice Taekwondo after school. It was something that was not part of my schoolwork, and I could just be practicing. And I hope that you have something like that. And when you get into the flow of practicing, you will get better and you can inspire others to get better as well. A good qualified teacher is a must. So I hope you will find a dojang where you have a great teacher and then you can learn. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for this channel for more videos. Taekwon.